last week, Kamala Harris did a sit-down interview with Bret Baier, and by going into the lion's den of Fox News and to talk to somebody who's arguably not really a journalist, he's definitely much more of a Trump campaign advocate, as this interview showed. Um, she not only was able to handle herself and uh, not lose her composure in talking to him, but a lot of people who watched his aggressive and combative style of asking questions and not letting her respond realized, how bad it sort of made their side look. And a number of people, again, anecdotally, have been saying how this really changed their mind on Kamala because, and they realize, of course, that, Trump would never do this. Trump would never go talk to a hostile interviewer who, he gets mad at being fact checked. He wanted to be able to take CBS off the air because he's mad at 60 Minutes because they were going to fact check him if he did an interview with him. Like this is the level of grievance that he's on. So we'll watch a clip of the just really the opening, really just the first 2 minutes told you exactly the kind of clown show this interview is going to be.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have an
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
So many women can relate to being talked over by a man. I don't know that anyone's had to be in as combative and accusatory a situation as that, because that's so over the top, where he's like, well, here's the first question, and then he's already like asking the next question while she's trying to answer and interrupt her.
He wanted to essentially ask the question and then make a point in the middle of asking his question, like, or ask his question, get a little bit of info, but that he felt, oh, well, what you just said just now furthers what I'm about to say, which is that, and it's like, Brett, you're not having that kind of a conversation. You're not trying, you shouldn't have gone into this with the idea of like, I am going to prove you wrong in all of these things. I'm going to show how you made all these mistakes and confront you with them. It's like, at the very least, you're supposed to frame those confrontations as a question and then wait for them to respond.
And a lot of those questions were like, how long have you been beating your wife?
Right.